It is James Duthie. JD, how's it going, buddy?
Good, boys. How you doing?
Fantastic. We were just having this conversation about the net mining, and it looks like Joseph Woll, you're going to be on the panel tonight. It looks like Joseph Woll is going to start this game. Do you think they need to find a way to sprinkle in a Samsonov on Saturday against Boston, or is that a decision you make after this one?
I think you make it after this one, and I don't think there's any immediate need. Like if that's in a big picture question, yes, you need to sprinkle him in, but I think you're at the point where it would be nice if one guy could play, 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 5, over a stretch that goes 15 games or something like that. Maybe Sheldon Keefe doesn't agree with that, but I just feel like this team has kind of been longing for a guy who's going to take the reins a little bit this season. And I think everything is pointed to Woll for most of it, right? I mean, he's had a couple of off nights, but he's been, measurably better than Samsonov through the entire season. And if he plays the way he played the other night or close to it tonight, I don't know why you wouldn't start him again on Saturday.
Yeah, James, how much do you think the Leafs are watching the standings? I mean, they're so used in the last few years to just be dominating the regular season, be right up there, 100-plus point seasons. It's not really looking that way. I think their division's a lot stronger than they thought. Do you think when they're messing around with goaltenders trying to get Samsonov going, are they kind of losing sight of where they land in the standings these days?
I think there's something to that they're so used to it not being an issue. Like playoff races haven't really existed for the Leafs in like 5 years or something like that now.
Yeah.
And not saying there will be one this year, but I think that's a valid point. Like not a concern right now, and I don't think they're really concerned. But if we get to Christmas time and it's still, it's somewhat dicey where they're, technically out of a spot or just sitting in a wild card spot or whatever, then yeah, I think they have to start to get into who gives us a chance to win every single night, the best chance, and not worry about the other thing. I mean, if Joe Woll can go on a run like this and look like he's a first-string goalie, then why forget the tandem thing? You don't need the tandem thing anymore. He's your guy now, and you mix in Samsonov like you would any other backup. I think that's not rocket science to figure that out, right? But they're not at that position there. But if they get there and they have a first string, boom. There's no rule that said when you started the season on a tandem that it had to be a tandem all season long. If one guy was going to go grab it and become the starter, then let him go grab it. Of course, like I said, that hasn't happened yet, but I think it has the potential with Woll.
James, don't check your Twitter account. The analytics community is going to come after you for that take. But you're so right. Just ride the hot hand. I wanted to ask you, too, 5 regulation wins in 20 games. If you guys can believe it, that's as many as the lowly San Jose Sharks. How much should we read into that number, James?
I think it's significant. I mean, it's not a massive stat because they're winning enough in overtime and the shootout. But that we put that up graphically on our show the other night when we were doing the game on Tuesday night. And it's really shocking when you look at the top teams in the league who are all around 13, 12, 14 regulation wins, and you see Toronto tied at that night was 27th with San Jose and 5, and I think there was only 3 teams under them. That's shocking to look at because of what we just talked about, because they've been such a regular season juggernaut for the last half decade or so. So I think it does say something. And I mean, you guys talk about it for hours every morning, so I'm not going to say anything you haven't said. It's been just it's been such a strange season because they haven't been bad at all. And there have been some really positive things, but they just have left you wanting more. And I think that's sort of reflective in that number of 5 regulation wins. There's so many nights where, the Chicago game's probably the perfect example where it's 3-1 and you're playing Chicago and you go, this should be a 5-1 win with no doubt in the third period whatsoever. And they end up losing that hockey game. I think that sort of thing happens just a little bit too much for a team that should be much better than that.
For sure. James, switching gears a little bit, the Flames have got not just 1 or 2, they've got multiple defensemen coming up at UFA that could be potential trade bait. Since there's more than 1, do you think there's potential of something to get done before the deadline? And also, having Treliving's background with the Calgary Flames, do you think that helps or hinders him in trying to get something done with that organization?
I think it probably helps. And I love, you're hearing a lot. Our guy Frankie Corrado was saying it yesterday that if you could find a way to get Zadorov and Tanev, that would be amazing. But I bet you Calgary's just chuckling at that, going, okay, well then what are you going to give us? Because if you're going to take two really good defensemen, I think, and this happens in every market, we underestimate what the price for that would be, right? I think that would be a monumental price for the Leafs to pay. I'd be really interested to see what the deal would look like, but I think it would be a lot. And I think that would take a little miracle to pull off both salary cap wise and asset wise for Toronto. Unless Calgary's going to ask for something that Leaf fans would go, what? You're not getting that. I'm not going to name names, but that's what Calgary will ask for. And so that would be fascinating. Like, would you be shocked if Calgary didn't ask for like Mitch Marner if you're going to want both of those defensemen? That's what they might ask for.
I think they're going to go young, like Minton, Cowan. That's where I would go. Okay,
but is Minton, Cowan, in a first rounder, is that going to do it? I don't know. I can't put my head on. I just know Calgary, I think, will ask for the world on something like that.
Yeah, not to speak for you, but we want those trades to happen in a couple months, right before Trade Center. No,
got it. None of this crap. Like no December trades. Sorry, Lee. Right on. What's the date this year? I don't even know. February, whatever the heck it is. Not even like the weekend before, just the morning of, right?
Yeah. I want to save everything for
that. So, Treliving might ruin my trade deadline that way, I think, and I wouldn't blame him because, I don't know how long Gio's going to be out, but they're going to have to do something here, at least make some sort of move, I think, before Christmas.
Do you think pulling up, it's age-old question, it seems like now, but do you get anything done to get this team to an actual Stanley Cup contender without breaking up those big four guys? Like salary cap wise, just trade bait wise, how do you get something done where you make your team substantially better and you think we can run at the Cup this year, which it just consistently doesn't seem like they have it on the back end, but without breaking those four guys up, is there a way to even do that?
By the way, can you hear it? My wife has decided, just as the moment I went on, start like painting the room.
No, we're good. We're good.
What is like incredibly loud in my house, but this is what happens all the time. Well, look, if we're playing Fantasy World and they were able to get those two defensemen from Calgary with what you're talking about, just prospects and picks and all that, I think the team would look really different with a couple of guys like that on the back end. And you get back to, somebody like Gio playing in a third pair and playing, 8 or 10 minutes a night and a lot of pressure off Morgan Riley, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it would take two things. It would take a substantial shakeup in the D where you add two large, really solid defensive defensemen, and B, that Joe Woll or Samsonov, but I'll say Woll as the most likelihood, becomes an, if not elite goaltender, a really solid, dependable number one goaltender. And the forwards, those core four forwards, all stay healthy. If all those things happen, then I think that come the spring, they're as legitimate as anybody else. The one thing about the East is there's some really good teams in the East, and it's a good conference, but there's not any juggernauts, I don't think, right now. And so I foresee a playoffs that could be, I think New Jersey will figure things out. I think the Rangers will be a force. Florida still looks really good. I don't know, Boston is overachieved so far and has stepped a little bit back right now. But I don't see anybody that you go, oh my goodness, we have no chance at beating those guys if those other things happen. As it stands right now, they don't look like a Cup contender whatsoever. Like if you were to say the contenders in the East right now, I'd name whatever 3-4 those teams I mentioned at the top, and the Leafs would stand sort of in that second tier with a bunch of others right now. And just because of that back, I don't think they've shown anything that would say otherwise. But again, it's the end of November, so.
Yeah, I know Odog always makes the comment that he doesn't think they're a serious team, and I tend to agree. And I think consistency is the big word we're looking for from this team, where it's like, James, you look at some of the better teams in this league, the Colorados, the whoever's, like, you know what you're going to get more times than not. Yeah, they're going to have their stinkers. Yeah, we overreact to shitty losses to Chicago, but more times than not, you know what you're going to expect. From this Leafs team, I have no clue who's going to come out against Seattle. I have no clue who's going to come out against Boston, and that's what scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I think you speak for every single Leafs fan, certainly all the ones every day. And, you know, we sit there and we're the same way. We sit there and do pregame shows for these games, and it's just really hard to know what you're going to get. If I was to take glass half full, you know, maybe they've and this is a reach here, but, you know, maybe they figure out that playoffs is all that matters, and they're not going to put, you know, pedal to the floor for the entire season and break records for wins and points in the regular season. They're going to sort of meander their way through December, January, and start kicking it into gear maybe come March and be ready come playoff time. That's what, you know, I guess that's all you can hope for right now, is that they'll do something like that. But yeah, it's a really weird team to watch on a night-to-night basis. But you know what? It's a lot worse, right? There's still a ton of talent there. They're still in a decent position. It's not Edmonton where they're having to dig themselves out of some massive hole with a start like that. So I think it's, you know, it's all of them are really valid concerns, but I think they're still in a decent position with a ton of time to turn it around and make some roster changes that'll help.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.